Whenever we think of the 23rd Psalm, we often think of a psalm calling us to inactivity and just simply physical rest and relaxation by still waters. However, most scholars don't believe that was the intention of the 23rd Psalm. They actually believe it was written when David was older, not a young boy in the shepherd field, but when he was older and he was looking over his entire life and recognizing God's activity in the midst of the whirlwind of his life. You see, David wasn't a person of inactivity. He was a person of big dreams. He was a person that took on challenges, right? He went toe to toe with Goliath. He was a successful general known for his strategic military plans and inspiration of men. He became the king of Israel, and in that did a major relocation process of the capital. I mean, he was always busy. He was always taking on the new challenges. He had tough circumstances. He went through that period of time where the king tried to hunt him down and tried to kill him, and he had to run for his life. He was known for making a few horrible decisions in his life. We could talk about Bathsheba, right? And what a horrible decision that was. Like, he even had family problems. He mismanaged some family problems, which ultimately resulted in Absalom rebelling against him, his very own son. You see, David had a life that was full of all sorts of things, all sort of great dreams, and also all sorts of failures and tragedy. But the 23rd Psalm is not about living an inactive life. It's about seeing God's activity in the midst of our active life. You know, if we would just look at the first phrase, the Lord is my shepherd. And if we could just resolve that in our life, how much goodness would come to us. But the Lord is my shepherd just basically means we're comfortable with his leadership. We're willing to go where he leads us. We're not in rebellion towards him. We're going to follow his direction for our lives, and we're at peace that he is our shepherd. And if we could surrender that to him, if we could say he is my shepherd, then the second part of that phrase becomes so true for us. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now, I really believe that phrase about I shall not want is about, it's about alignment, it's about resources, and it's about peace in our lives. The first thing is to say I shall not want is to say, hey, I've surrendered myself to God's design and God's plan for my life. So I don't have some sort of conflict in conflict with God. I'm not fighting against him for something that I want that I'm not sure he wants to give me. I've aligned myself with God, and therefore this want and desire is at peace with him. You know, David wrote another great word of advice for us in the 37th Psalm when he said, delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Because when we delight in the Lord and he's our main focus, man, the desires of our hearts become matched and aligned with his desires for us. So I think I shall not want is really an issue of aligning ourselves with the Lord being our shepherd. The next big question is the question I shall not want for resources. I believe that when we align ourselves with what God's will is for our lives, we have the resources to live how God has intended for us to live. That means we have the wisdom, we have the strength, we have whatever it is that we need to be able to live and fulfill the mission that God has given us in life. And then ultimately, that's where we find peace. I mean, when we think about peace, it means we become comfortable with God's timing. I shall not want. I don't have my own agenda or my own schedule anymore. I'm comfortable with his direction and I'm comfortable with his timing. I'm comfortable with his instruction. Just like Ezekiel, right? When he's standing in the valley of dry bones and God asks him a question and God says, will these bones live again? And Zeke is just like, man, I don't know, God, only you know. So then God gives him this crazy instruction. He says, prophesy to these dead bones. And so Ezekiel does. and God brings the bones to life. Or it's like Joshua when he's crossing the river and he runs into Jericho. And God says, here's our plan. March around Jericho 7 times. On the 7th day, march 7 times. And then bang your pots together and scream and yell. And you're like, what sort of strategy is that? But we're at peace. We're at peace with the instruction and the guidance and the timing of God because he is our shepherd. And we understand that he is the one that delivers for us in life. So when you read the 23rd Psalm, read it as a psalm of following God's mission for your life. Read it as a psalm of leadership. Read it as a psalm of his activity in the midst of all of your activity. Man, have a great day.